Hey everybody, in this demonstration I want to show some tricks and techniques for working with audio in After Effects and creating animations that are automatically synchronized to your audio. A lot of times people don't realize that you can do really cool stuff with audio in this program. Alright, for this demo I'm going to start with a new project, going to start from scratch. And I have an audio track that I've extracted from an old CD here of a song called Hoops by the Chemical Brothers. And I grabbed this track because it's very high impact, very fast paced. Good example. But After Effects will use just about any type of sound format, AIF file, WAV file, MP3, M4A, just about any type of standard sound file. Now I've got the entire 6-minute track here. I'm going to go ahead and bring it into my project. Now I'm making a new composition to do an animation in. I'm going to call this audio demo. And I'm going to make my duration here about 15 seconds. And I'll use my HD frame size. Actually, I'll use my 720 HD frame size just to make it a little smaller. Hit OK. Now what I don't want to do is drop the whole 6-minute song into this 15-second timeline because, well, trying to edit a 6-minute piece of footage in a 15-second timeline is not a real good idea, right? Not easy to do. So I'll delete that. And first thing I want to show you about working with audio, and this holds true for video as well, is that if you double-click the file, it will open up in a footage viewer and give you a mini timeline here of the full piece of footage. And so then you can, drag your time marker through there. Now, if you hold the Command key on the Mac or the Control key on your PC, you can scrub through the audio. If you tap the space bar, you can play the audio. So basically, in the footage viewer, you want to make a rough cut to drop into your timeline down below rather than dropping the whole 6-minute track in there. So in this case here, I'm going to go to about maybe 2.5 seconds here. Yeah, so I think around 2.5 seconds. So I'm going to set an in point by clicking the in point button right there. And I'm going to go ahead and let this play maybe for about, let's see how long I want to go. Maybe till about there. I'll mark an out point. And now to drop this cut into the timeline below, we have two edit options here. We have an insert edit, and what that'll do is if there are any underlying layers, it'll open up a gap and drop the cut into the gap. In this case, I don't have any other layers, so it doesn't really matter which edit option I use. But the other one is called an overlay edit, and that will just drop the cut into the timeline below without affecting any of the other layers. So I click that button and you can see that that cut is dropped here into the timeline. Now I think I'm going to go back to my footage viewer for a minute though and take another cut. So maybe a little later in the track. I like this bit here with the guitar. So maybe I'll adjust the in and the out point and take another cut here. See, and it goes into this bit. Okay, and so maybe I'll mark out there and then drop that in with an overlay edit. And it drops it in with the in point wherever the time marker happened to be. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the time marker back. And then to slide that cut over, I'll hit the left bracket on the keyboard. That'll slide the cut over like that. So now I have two cuts in the timeline. Next thing I want to show you here about working with audio in After Effects is how to display the waveform. If we open up our layer, go to Audio, go to our waveform group, we can display the waveform. Notice there's also a property called audio levels for adjusting the volume or level of that track. Now, if I hit the L key on the keyboard, that solos out the levels property. If you hit it twice, if you go LL, that solos out the waveform. So again, hit the L key once, that shows you the audio levels. Hit it twice, LL, that solos out the waveform. Now, another thing about working with the waveform here is if you click on the bottom edge, you can expand the amount of space that it's using to display the waveform. So in the case of audio editing, helpful to make those waveforms a little bit bigger. Now in this case here, what I'm going to do is a quick little edit. I think maybe I'll zoom in a little bit here. And you know what, let me hide my in, out, and duration columns here. And let me also hide my track matte and blending mode columns. That way I've got a bit more horizontal space to work with here. And if I hit the space bar, I can play. So I think I'm going to cut in right here. So I'll slide that in point over or hit Option and the left bracket key to trim an in point. So that makes a pretty good entry point into my little edit here. I'll slide it over. And then it kind of goes into this repeating beat. So let's see, the other cut I've got here then goes into the guitar. So I think what I'll do is get to that a little sooner here. So maybe right about here. I'll slide this over. And I'm going to zoom in using the plus or minus keys on the keyboard to zoom in and out on the time ruler. We can zoom in close, take a closer look at the waveform, and then I'm going to trim an in point for this one, Option and the left bracket. I'm going to trim an out point for this one, Option and the right bracket. I don't want to have any overlap, so I'll trim it like that. And let's see if that little edit that I just made there works. All right, pretty cool. Now the next thing I want to show as far as some simple audio editing here is if we need to do a fade, we can animate the levels property. So I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have this just fade out towards the end. So maybe starting somewhere right around here at about 9 seconds, I'll grab this layer. I'm going to hit Shift and the letter L to display the audio levels property and the waveform. Clicking the stopwatch for audio levels. Now, if the audio level is at 0, that means that the volume is at whatever the inherent volume in that source footage happens to be. Now, of course, this is at a good volume. It's not too loud or too quiet, but if you do need to make it louder or softer, you can of course adjust that levels property. Now, in terms of basic audio editing stuff, you don't want to ever amplify your audio to where it's getting clipped like this. This is kind of like overexposing a photograph. You're going to lose detail if you do that. So best to have your audio, within the spectrum here, so nothing's getting cut off or clipped. And I'll go ahead and move the time marker forward a few seconds here, maybe out here to about 14. I'm going to bring my audio levels down to about -25. And you can go as low as like minus nearly 200, but look at what a fast fade down that will create. That's not going to be a very nice, smooth, gradual fade. Okay, that happens very quickly. So I'm going to go, like I said, about -25 or maybe about -30. And then I'm going to trim an out point, hitting Option and the right bracket key. And let's see how that sounds. So nice gradual fade down. Okay, so usually around -30 or somewhere around there is usually a good place to be. I might go about -35 here actually. And then again, just by trimming an out point at that time. And I'm also going to put an ease out on this keyframe here. Again, so it's just a nice smooth gradual fade down. There we go. That works pretty good. Certainly good enough for my demo here. Now at this point I want to merge the two layers together, so I'm going to select them both. I'm going to do Layer, Pre-Compose, and I'm going to put them in a new comp called Audio Edit. So to basically mix down, if you've got multiple layers all edited together to create your audio, you can pre-compose them all together into a new comp, and that's how you can kind of mix down the audio into a single layer. I'll hit OK, and that looks good. Okay, so now I've got my audio layer edited and ready to go. Let's add some visuals. I'm going to make a solid layer, and the first automated kind of effect here that I want to introduce is the audio waveform and audio spectrum effects. I'm going to call this one audio waveform effects. I'll make it the comp size. Solid black layer is fine. Hit OK. Now I'll go to Effect, and then under the Generate group, Audio Spectrum and Audio Waveform are two effects we can use to automatically generate an effect from our audio. So in the Audio Waveform effect, the very first parameter, Audio Layer, we choose our Audio Edit layer, hit play, and right away we have a nice animated effect. Now there's a lot of parameters to explore and experiment with in this effect. You've got a start point, you've got an end point, you've got some different settings here for the look of the waveform, how detailed it is, the height of the waveform, thickness, color values, and so on. So a lot of fun stuff to play with here, experiment with. Pretty cool. Now, one other thing I want to show you with this effect is this effect also can make use of a path. So, for example here, if we took the pen tool or used a shape tool and create a path on the layer. So, just for demonstration here, I'll make a curved path, maybe something like that. And then in the effect where it says path, if we choose that mask group, it will attach the effect to the path. Pretty cool. And the mask itself can be animated too. So if it is an animated mask shape, like let's say I hit M for mask, hit the stopwatch for mask path, and then maybe I go a few seconds later and I use the arrow tool to change the shape of the path. Maybe I change the direction here. Have that one down there and that one up there. So it is going to animate. You can see that path line animates. The effect stays attached to it. Now, like I said, it can also be a shape. It doesn't have to be a pen tool path. If I take the mask group and delete that, and then instead of the pen tool this time, I'll take the polygon tool, for example. And let's say I click on the layer, draw a polygon, holding the Shift key while I draw it to center it out and keep it leveled. Now notice it wants to mask the layer. So down here, because it's a closed shape, it wants to mask the layer. So down here, I'll turn the mask option to none. And then in the effect, target that as the path to use. So it's going to add the effect around that polygon. And maybe I'll bring the height value back down a bit, so not so extreme. All right, you get the idea. So now the audio spectrum effect functions very much the same way. So I'll make another solid layer, This one I'll call audio spectrum. Same thing, solid black layer, under effect, generate audio spectrum this time. And we got to hook it up to our audio, so same as the other one, audio layer. We choose our audio edit. Now the only difference here is instead of a waveform, it's a low to high audio spectrum, but a lot of the settings are the same. You have a start point, you have an end point, you've got settings for how detailed it is, how thick the line is, how soft it is, the color values, and so on. So a lot of stuff to experiment and play with there and create custom looks. And just like the other one, this also has a path option. So if you do want to attach it to a path, you can. And that path shape can be animated. Now, I think in this case I'm not going to bother attaching it to a path. I'll just delete that off of there and turn my other layer back on. Now by default, this effect, when you apply it to a solid black layer like this, the black layer is going to become transparent. So I think there is probably a blending option or something like about that. Or here, composite on original. If you don't want the layer that it's applied to become see-through, you can choose that option. But in this case, I want them both. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you here about working with audio and being able to automatically synchronize visuals to your audio is that After Effects includes a convert audio to keyframe command. If we select our audio layer and we go to Animation, Keyframe Assistant, and then convert audio to keyframes, what this is going to do is, see, if we look at our waveform, of course, this waveform has an amplitude, how high up or low down these peaks are, right? These lines are. So when we convert audio to keyframe, what it's going to do is it's going to create a null object layer called audio amplitude, and it's going to give us what's called some expression control sliders with numeric values. And it gives you one for the left channel, one for the right, and then one for both channels together. And basically these numeric values correlate with the amplitude of this waveform. So that's really all it's doing. It's just converting that waveform to keyframes with numeric values that match the amplitude. But what you can do with that is you can use your parent and link feature to basically link these values to property values. So for example, if I had, say, a little solid layer, let's say I just made a solid color layer here, and I'll just make it maybe like 200 pixels by 200 pixels. So I've got a square in the middle of the frame here. And let's say I show the scale property for that layer. And then I take that scale property, and in the parent and link column, I go to that properties link option, and I click and drag to this slider value for, actually I'll go to both channels. So it's going to link the scale of that solid layer to the slider value of this both channels group on the null object layer that the command created. And if I hit play, you can see that the scale of that layer now animates to the audio, right? Because it's using that audio waveform to create the keyframes. Now, a lot of times though, the values aren't really as big as you might want them to be. So how is it doing this? Well, it's doing it by adding what's called an expression to the property. The scale value is now in red, indicating that that property value is being controlled by an expression script. Okay, so when you use that link option, it added a script to that. And if we open up this layer, we can see the script. And if we click on the bottom edge, we can actually make that area a little bigger so we can see the full script. And you can see what it's done here. It's created basically a script here to tell it what to do. And if we kind of look at this and read it backwards, we can kind of figure it out. It says slider, both channels, from the effect called audio amplitude on the layer in this comp, right? Or the layer called audio amplitude in this comp. So it's kind of, if you look at it backwards, it kind of makes sense. And because scale is a two-dimensional property, there's both an X and a Y value, it's giving you a two-dimensional array here. So you can see it says temp, comma, temp, where temp equals the slider value from the both channels effect on the layer called audio amplitude that's in this comp. So again, it kind of, if you read it backwards, it kind of makes a bit more sense. Now, the thing is, in these arrays, you can put an absolute value. So like, let's say, you know, I wanted the width to be 100. I could change it. So X is 100, and then the Y value is temp. See, now only the Y value is animating, right? So, and it doesn't have to be temp. It could be, you know, you could change this. You could say, you know, call it, say, just Y, for example, and then change that to Y so it matches, and it'll still work. Okay, so the variable here can be named whatever you want. Now, in terms of making those values bigger, where you see the semicolon at the end of the script, that's kind of like a period at the end of the sentence. That's telling it that the command is done. If you click before that and just put in some simple math, like I want to multiply that result by, say, 5. I can put in times 5 before the semicolon, and now look at the difference. Okay, so easy way to take those results and make the values bigger is by just using some simple math. Now, I think in this case what I want to do is I want the width and height to both be animating, but maybe a little bit different. So I'm actually going to copy all of this Y variable. I'm going to hit Command-C to copy. I'm going to hit return to put a line break there and paste it in there. And I'm going to change this, though, to an X. And then instead of times 5, this one I'm going to go times 10. And then in the array here, I'm going to change that absolute value to my variable for X. And let's see how that works. So now I have different results for both X and Y based on the convert audio to keyframe command. Now you can link any property to the audio amplitude sliders, but if it's, you may need to play around with the expression script to get the numbers to kind of do what you want them to do. Now, to finish up this demo here, and hopefully this is giving you some good ideas for creating, synchronized animations automatically to your audio, and as well as some basic audio editing techniques. But just for fun here, I'm going to throw an adjustment layer at the top of the stack here. I'm going to go Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and I'm going to throw an effect on there. I'm going to go to Effect, and I'm going to go under, I think it's under Generate. I'm not sure which effect group it's in. The one I'm looking for is called CC Collida. So I'm going to start to type it in the Effect and Presets panel. That shows me which group it's in. It's in the Stylize group, and I can click on it here and drag that onto that layer, onto my adjustment layer here. And you can see that creates kind of a kaleidoscope effect. I'm going to play with the settings a little bit here. Just tweak the settings, maybe tweak the style. And see how easy it is to create abstract visuals that are automatically synchronized to your audio. So hopefully this gives you some ideas, and I'll see you in the next recording. Thanks for watching.